People holding hearts before charts, before meds had names, we had compassion. This one's for every nurse, past, present, and future. Let's go.
We are the calm in the storm, the beacon of hope. Every beat, every breath, we honor the oath. From night shifts to day breaks, loving our tone. Pepler taught us, connection heals more than alone. From Florence to futures, we redefine care, not just meds and machines. We're presence of prayer, with hands that comfort, eyes that see truth. Healing ain't a chart, notice what we do. We are nurses with hearts wide open.
Welcome everybody back to another episode of Peplow's Ghost. I'm really excited about our next guest. Dr. Lindsay Hill is here. I was doing a bit of self-admitted cyber stalking for her. She was in my social medias. She was all over my LinkedIn, and she was doing some really cool stuff. And I was really just interested to get an opportunity to get to know her, and figured the podcast is a great opportunity just to get to meet a fellow Psych NP and share what kind of cool stuff she's doing. So I'm really excited to do this. Also joined with my constant co-host, Dr. Melissa Chapman Hayes. So let's get into it. Dr. Lindsay Hill, Lindsay with an A. I've got some friends who want to make that distinction. Lindsay with an E. Sometimes it's a distinction to make. She is an educator, mentor, clinical entrepreneur, and I think entrepreneur says it best. She runs the Psych NP Boot Camp. She has a prescriber guide. She's a published thought leader. She does so much. It's so great to meet you, Lindsay, and thank you so much for being here on Peplow's Ghost.
It's meeting you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. My first question really is just maybe to kind of get to know you a little bit. If you've listened to any of our prior episodes, my journey to being a Psych NP is, I'll cynically say, convoluted. It's not a straight path by any means. So, I started off as a social worker actually, and then a couple of years saw the light and got into nursing. And as we're recording this, it is the end of Nurses Week. So happy Nursing Day and Week to you, Lindsay, as well. But maybe let's start right there and say, do you mind sharing what got you interested? What was your path to becoming a Psych NP? And yeah, let's just start there.
Absolutely. It was somewhat non-traditional, I would say. I was in nursing school in a small town in Ohio, and I went to my psychiatric nursing rotation, and it really was my, I hate to say it, but least favorite rotation, because I just didn't see the patients getting better on the unit that I was in. And I just felt like, man, this would be really depressing to be doing this on an ongoing basis and not really feeling like these people are really making much progress. And so I just kind of, in my mind, put it out of my head working in psych nursing. And honestly, I hadn't even heard about the role of psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner until I moved to Arizona, interestingly enough. And I didn't know anybody in Arizona. And so it was hard to get my first nursing job because they were looking for people with experience. And it took me a while to get that first nursing job. And it happened to be through buying a couch on Craigslist, interestingly enough. And I got a community health nursing position at Arizona State University. And it was there that I met a couple of psychiatric nurse practitioners, where instantly I was like, oh, wow, whatever they're doing with these patients and these students seems to be making a difference, because these students are going from not functioning to now functioning. And I was super inspired by that. And I just kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up going back to school after like a year and a half of community health nursing, which I was really nervous to do. I didn't feel like I was necessarily ready. I had some mentors in my life at the time that were really like, you have this opportunity with working here and getting this like discount to go to school. Like, just seize the opportunity if you know it's what you want to do. Like, I remember the dean of the nursing program at the time telling me like, well, I have imposter syndrome too. And I was like, really? I would have never guessed that, So exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I got into becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And I love it. I think I've been a Psych NP now for 11 or 12 years. And the path has had a lot of ups and downs. I've had periods of burnout where I didn't know if I was going to be continuing in the field, quite frankly. And I'm in a really good place now. And I feel really passionate about just kind of expanding the role and advocating for mental health.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't mind maybe sharing a little bit about that. You mentioned kind of reaching a point maybe of burnout, and that's always an area of interest to me. And I talk to my students a lot about, being careful of that first job you take, because, don't want to get into a position where you're just in a cynically called like a pill mill where you're just seeing like 25 patients a day and just kind of grinding through. And I remember we had a previous guest, Andrew Penn, who talked about that he was kind of burnt out in nursing as well until he got interested in psychedelics. And now that's his passion and does lots of teaching and talking on that. So where did you see the burnout coming and how did you kind of resolve that?
I saw the burnout coming. Let's see here. I had a really strong mentor at my first job. It was working with higher acuity patients for sure. And I did feel like I lacked resources at times as far as like where to refer people who were struggling with co-occurring substance use and things like that. But I definitely felt supported and like I had that good mentorship and support. I did have a traumatic brain injury and I believe 2021. And I do think that was a contributing factor because I was really just struggling mentally with my memory. And I was also somewhat newly like postpartum. And I just found myself like more irritable and wanting more flexibility to just have more time to be with my son. And so I realized at a point that as far as being able to impact change, I felt like I had kind of hit a ceiling with that in that organization because various reasons. But I felt like if my boss could have maybe progressed up the ladder there and been able to impact change more so. But she was also, I think, kind of like stuck at a point where I'm like, I don't feel like they fully understand my scope of practice. And there's just certain things that I'm always going to be curious too, like if I don't try doing my own thing. And I went and worked for another company actually first because I just never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't think that was in my DNA or just for me, and at that place that I was working, I saw these two, one was a Psych NP, one was more of the billing side of things. They scaled a group practice and sold it in like a couple years. And like the confidence, even though like clinically they had less experience, was just like really kind of impressive. And I remember they asked me to do a course on DBT because that was my doctoral project. And I was like, I know I'm going to give my heart and soul to this and I'll be paid an hourly rate. Like, that's cool that they are even would want me to do that. But like, also I could probably just create a course just on my own too. Like, so it just kind of inspired me to take some more risks and at least find out if I was going to hate it or not, being in private practice and doing more for myself. But I will say, just like Andrew Penn, kind of leaning into that area of interest, like kind of getting back to areas I'm passionate about. I think I had lost that a little bit just in what I was doing has been really important for my kind of longevity in the field.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those things about yourself. And it reminds me of a quote I just heard recently, and this is an old quote, and not obviously I'm going to say it, but I forget, I'm going to not be able to reference it, but fortune does favor the bold, right? It's and then sometimes that is hard to kind of take that step out. So thank you again. I'll turn it to Melissa.
Thanks, Dr. Hill. I want to ask you a bit about vulnerability. And in your work, you've explored this concept, both vulnerability for the patient and then for the provider. Peplau suggested that the nurse's self-awareness is the primary tool for healing. So what do you see as the risks and rewards for nurses who allow themselves to be truly present and vulnerable with their patients?
Yeah. I think the risk could be making the treatment or the appointment about yourself, as the provider, if you are maybe using self-disclosure, but not necessarily in a way that's in the patient's best interest. And I think that could be a risk. But I also think that like it can be really powerful in appropriate situations and allow patients to feel more safe and more able to hear you and have a stronger therapeutic relationship with you. I've also which I despised public speaking in grad school and my whole life, really. And I'm actually speaking at a psychotherapy conference in October, which is kind of ironic. And I'm like, I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone. If I hate it, I don't have to do any more conferences, but maybe I'll like it. I don't know yet. It just sounds scarier to me for some reason, like speaking in person than doing like these podcast episodes, or you know what I mean? But anyway, all that to say, like I've definitely been more vulnerable publicly And it's been scary. It's opened myself up to criticism and people misinterpreting my intentions or motivations or speculating or making judgments, which has been hard at times, that kind of like rejection sensitivity feeling. But I would say for sure, like the benefits have outweighed the negatives because I've had so many more people come to me and be like, thank you. This is how I feel. And I thought I was like the only one in different areas, in Psych NP related things, but also in, being a mom, being a bonus mom, having a traumatic brain injury, so that's made it really like worth it. And honestly, kind of helped my sense of having a community for sure, because I did get to the point too where I was very isolated. I felt very siloed. I went from that first job where I had that strong mentor in person for 7 or 8 years to now I'm doing telehealth and I'm just here out on an island kind of. So being in community has been really, really helpful in allowing myself to be seen and not kind of hiding out as much as I did as in my early years of my career, I would say.
Yeah. And hopefully that community is relatable, especially as a mom, if your little one is young too. That's good stuff. And hopefully could shield against some of the, negative comments, judgments, et cetera, that are going to come with something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough when you put yourself out there. I mean, obviously you're opening yourself up to those kind of things as well. But for what I see, you're doing great work. And so, yeah, just want to kind of shout out to that as well. But one of the things when I was looking at your website and kind of looking at the work that you're doing, I'm really interested in your thoughts because I think you have a connection to academia, but you're very much an entrepreneur and doing kind of your own thing. And it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you have a real kind of niche of, helping people, again, that sense of community we're just talking about, when people just, graduate from programs from like the University of Iowa where I work and things like that. And I think there's a lot of, really desire for that. And people are really drawn to kind of, what do I do in those first 1 to 5 years of practice? And sometimes people don't have, I had a great mentor as well. And it sounds like you did too, right out of school, but not everybody gets that opportunity. So maybe to kind of, put you on the spot and let's get you a dream wish list. From an academia point of view, what do you think is missing in PMHNP programs? What should we be focusing more on? And, again, maybe, I'm going to kind of lean towards more that psychotherapy part you were saying that you're going to speak on. And that's obviously one of the focuses of this podcast, but feel free to go wherever you want. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on what PMHNP programs are missing.
Yeah, I definitely think the psychotherapy education and application piece, which actually, like, there was a misunderstanding with the dean of my program when I was doing my project because of kind of me writing my PICO and putting in the background of like why I feel like it's lacking in certain Psych NP programs, maybe not all. And yeah, I felt bad because I felt like she was taking that very like personally. And she was a great instructor. She was a great dean. But I do feel from what I've heard that most of us graduate not feeling like we truly understand what it means. Like we're kind of like identity confused as far as like, am I supposed to do psychotherapy? Am I not? Like, I'm not a therapist. Like, what does this really mean? And it was just very like not black and white, very nuanced. And it just took me a really long time to feel confident in that area. So I would say stronger education in that regard, and clinical experiences and having those opportunities in school. That really was a differentiator for me because I happened to express to my instructors, I really want to like any psychotherapy opportunities, like I want those. And so I was able to go through DBT as a participant actually first, and then I was able to co-lead skills groups. But it was going through as a participant that really changed the game for me. And it was interesting because here I was like, well, I'm pretty high functioning. I'm like in grad school. Feel like I have it together. You know what I mean? And then I'm like with these teens who are like self-harming and stuff. And I'm just like, I'm learning possibly more than I don't know. Like I'm learning a ton. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow, some really basic things that I thought that I understood about my emotions that I really didn't. You know what I mean? Because I had been to therapy before, but I feel that I got really tripped up in CBT because I'm like, well, I know this stuff. So now I'm just like ticked at myself because I know this stuff and I still can't change my behavior. And so in DBT, just changing your behavior and then having the group aspect and being able to come back and kind of report back and being like, oh, I'm noticing that when I change those behaviors, like this really helped. You know what I mean? So going off on a tangent, but yeah, psychotherapy is a huge piece. And then, yeah, just more of the clinical application piece too. I think, Dr. Carlat's content, with Carlat Publishing, I didn't discover his resources until, and it was probably from being online that I discovered them. But like, I feel like it was like 5 years into practice. And I'm like, how did I not know about these resources? So that's another, like I've tried to advocate to get more of his content into Psych NP programs because I'm like, his content's great. And it's very like content that you can use when you're right there with the patient, right? And those are the kind of resources I think that we need more of in these programs.
Yeah, it's kind of that pragmatic side of things. You're right. I really love that idea, that identity confusion that we do experience. I think that was so well put because it's something. I mean, I see this kind of written, people trying to use the word integrated and all these kind of things, but it is a confusing space. And I think people do misrepresent us outside of the field as well, communities and even patients sometimes, you're just my pill person, right? I'm not supposed to open up to you. I'm not supposed to talk about these deep problems, but yeah, that's going to resonate. That really resonated with me. Thanks. That's identity confusion. Yeah. Thanks.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing what you did, because I don't think that is at all a tangent to talk about your experience going through DBT and what you had learned. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, thank you. Again, vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a deep commitment to nursing education, and Peplo often talked about the nurse as a participant observer. How do you teach new students to step back and observe their own roles within the patient relationship while they're simultaneously learning the heavy clinical demands of the job?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do it a lot through the coaching that I provide and the education I provide on social media. But in the Psych NP Boot Camp and fellowship that I run, we do a lot of like just coaching and reflection and also storytelling with like de-identified cases. I think that that's super helpful. And it's how I learn a lot of times is just getting to hear about other people's experiences. And so I think just modeling that, even as far as like modeling my own journey with being that participant, on an ongoing basis, because I still see patients and I still deal with difficult cases and cases where I'm second guessing myself and, trying to kind of have that more observing role. It keeps me accountable, teaching the students and again, modeling that for them, I think.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I think kind of maybe going off of that as well, you mentioned you're still in practice doing all this kind of great work. And maybe, I know, again, kind of further, my question I had for you, kind of students coming out and things like that, as you're mentoring and, providing this fellowship for people, how do you deal with this constant tension between, again, practices, in private practice, you do have the luxury of kind of dictating what you're going to do and who you're going to see and things. But if people are in clinics and things, they get a lot of pressure of prescribing and using EHRs and telehealth and just all the metrics that they get kind of measured and dictated by saying, what you're a good provider. I saw once recently that somebody was told that they have to see, what was it, like 2.4 patients an hour. It's just like this quick, turnover of patients. So how do you kind of mentor and what sort of things do you help people kind of balance that whole thing? Again, maybe going back to even the beginning of our conversation, talking about burnout and things like that. So how do you talk to your people that you consult with and develop this community of balancing all this thing while still maintaining your core as a nurse?
Absolutely. One of the things I do that I want to continue to expand upon is I teach in my program about dialectical behavior therapy and the concept of being dialectical, because I think that it applies in a lot of different areas, right? To be able to have that skill of, okay, what two things could be true about this situation, because we are in these systems where we have these demands and these requirements. And a lot of us have this like conviction and like really want to help patients. And it sometimes feels like it's like, not possible. So I think, learning that concept of dialectics, two things can be true, is one of the things I do. And then, trying to teach them about maybe some red flags too in some of these organizations of a place that might be ethically, not practicing in a way that's going to align with their ethics. So I do coaching through one-on-one and in my group, just with people who experience that all the time. I had somebody recently actually who started a job and was like, the person overseeing me told me like I shouldn't be asking about sleep really. And I was like, yeah. So stuff like that where it's like, you really want to be in an environment where you're supported to practice in a way that ethically isn't against your ethics, right? And I think when it does get to that point where you're questioning then maybe look for a different job situation. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But it's not easy.
No, it's not. I mean, especially, when you're salary and, people, have mortgages, car payments and everything else to pay for. But yeah, what a great example. Because I'm like, sleep, why wouldn't you ask? I mean, sleep is so basic. I usually tell people in my psychopharm course, a lot of PMHNPs are pseudo psych experts or sleep experts because you're treating so much sleep with so many different disorders. And, but, even going beyond that micromanagement of, talking about what you can and can't talk about in your practice is, not treating you as a professional as you should be. So that was a great example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So kind of future facing here, as you look at the trajectory of nursing over maybe, let's say, the next decade, what is one piece of Hildegard Peplau's wisdom that you think is most at risk of being forgotten? And why is it the one that we need to fight to keep?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that the therapeutic relationship is the most powerful tool. I think we could lose sight of that with AI and just like, it's exciting in some ways and it's also scary, right? And I really think that we underutilize that intervention of the therapeutic relationship when we put so much pressure on ourselves to pick the perfect medication or like refer for the perfect therapy and evidence-based. And it's like, there is so much power in that therapeutic relationship. So I just think we're at a kind of a time where, there's so many psych NPs who are graduating too from these programs. And like, it feels more saturated for a lot of people to find opportunities. It's different than when I graduated in 2015 for sure. So I think that that's one of the most important things that Peplau talked about that we really need to kind of revisit and remember on a daily basis.
Which is why we call this Peplau's Ghost. Yeah, I think that's very well said. I mean, it's that relationship piece always, it feeds me. I mean, it's one of those things that when I get lost in my practice and feel like, if I feel like I don't know how to help this person, I go back to the relationship. I go back to, those validation, those real core foundational therapeutic communications and look at, what other sorts of psychotherapy you can do. So, yeah.
That's a really great way to put it too, because I'm just even thinking about a case right now I'm dealing with, and I'm like, we need to be reminded, right? Because it can be frustrating and discouraging sometimes when we're like really trying to help this patient and we're like, and it's like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like just being reminded, like, okay, maybe I need to revisit just like the basics in the therapeutic relationship, and it's great point.
Yeah. Because I mean, we all work with patients that, will fail medications and have, an army, long list of different meds that they've tried and failed and for various reasons and such. And so the people that keep coming back and keep, striving, I think those are the things we need to kind of focus on is that, that they're still working. They're still trying these things. They're still with us for a reason. They want to get better. And sometimes, the science is still evolving, so there's still stuff we need to kind of learn, but the relationship will always be there. So
it's true. That's very
true. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Lindsay Hill. This has been great. I forgot to plug this in the beginning, but Dr. Lindsay Hill has a website. It is Lindsay Hill, Lindsay, Lindsay, Hill, HILL.co. Check out her website. Check out her fellowship. Check out her all cool stuff that she's doing. Again, this has been a great experience. Thank you so much for being here, Lindsay. I probably will continue to stalk you on Instagram and other places, but it's been a pleasure to get to know you here a little bit. And so I'm sure the listeners will enjoy this as well. Please stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
We are nurses, the world can't forget. We give our all, no regrets. Modern in our ways, but our roots don't decay. Nurses anthem and it's here to stay. We are nurses.
So here's to the hands that heal, the hearts that stay steady, the voices that whisper you're not alone. Because nursing isn't just what we do, it's who we are.